Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen. With me today is our own pianist in residence, Sam Page. This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today. We're also happy because our guest of honor today was having trouble connecting. We were having technical issues, but it looks like those issues have been ironed out. So I think we're going to have a clean podcast today, which I know Sam's looking forward to. He's like applauding. He's clapping his hands in the background there. How's it going there, Sam?
Indeed. Glad to be here.
We haven't done a solo for you lately. We got to get that going one of these times.
Oh, yeah, maybe next week.
Yeah, Sam's a pianist, Elizabeth.
Wow, that's great.
Every once in a while, he'll just start. He sits down at the keyboard, connects into us so we can hear him, and he doesn't play sheet music. He just invents it as he goes.
Oh, I love that.
Every single time.
Free playing. That's great.
Yeah, just total improvisation, and it's
My
really.
stepfather's a pianist. He's
yeah.
Very cool, yeah.
We got to go to France in middle school because he's that good.
I love it. That's great. That's wonderful. I kind of am a pianist. I'm kind of getting back into it, but yeah, music is a wonderful thing. It's really good for the soul. Absolutely. It's good for everybody. Plus, his music, by the way, not only does he improvise it, but it all has a very positive tone to it.
Oh,
you
awesome.
Listen to it, and at the end, you feel lifted.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. In a way, I consider it my form of channeling.
I think it is.
Absolutely. That's great.
I really do believe that. So, anyway, our guest today is Elizabeth. I should have asked for the pronunciation before I got going here, but I'm going to try it. Mikatowicz. Oh, you gave it. Well, thank you. You fed it to me. I appreciate that.
Happy to help.
And Elizabeth has a clothing and art line, which she's going to be telling us a little bit about. But she also has, we often get guests on here who have had traumatic experiences and so forth. And the storyline is pretty consistent. Usually they go through some rough stuff. And at the end, they never want to go through it again, but they learned a lot from it. They became stronger people as a result of it. And that becomes a main part of their storyline. Elizabeth's case, it actually goes a little bit further than that because she's become something of a crusader within the realm that she found herself caught up in. But I'm going to let you tell the story rather than me trying to tell the story because it's your story, first of all. And second of all, you'll probably tell it a whole lot better than I do. So welcome to the program. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So in my 20s, I was in a very violent domestic violence relationship, and it left me partially handicapped. He assaulted me, and the head injury was so bad that you could see my skull when it happened. Like, they had to sew the muscle back, and then they had to sew the skin back. I couldn't lift this eyebrow for a year. They told me I was going to have to get plastic surgery to fix it. But the problem was I started getting seizures like almost immediately, and that made me no longer able to care for my children safely. My daughter was a toddler, and I was literally like waking up on the ground, not knowing how long I was out for, with a 14-month-old running around. So this was like soul crushing because, there was nothing I could do to make that better. And, the other thing was, the doctors gave me opioids for it, and I took them at first, but once they told me I was pregnant, this is how I found out I was pregnant with my son. So, I tried to refuse them, and they threatened me with Child Protective Services if I didn't take the prescription. And this is like 15 years ago or a little more, when they were still, Big Pharma was still pushing their opioids and, profiting off of the suffering of the American people. I think we do like 70% of the global prescription medications, and we make up 5% of the world. So we are literally doing all the drugs. And so they told me I was on too small of a dose to get addicted. We all know that's a lie now with how many lives have been lost to addiction. So the abuse got worse. My situation got worse. I eventually went to the battered women's shelter because now I lost my apartment because of him. And the last time he assaulted me, he strangled me so bad that my windpipe collapsed in on itself.
Oh, God.
So, like, to explain it sort of best that I can. Like, you imagine your windpipe as like a tube of plastic. If you bend the plastic, it will have a crease, so it can go back to its normal, shape, but it will still have that crease. So it can easily collapse in on itself again. That's what was happening with my windpipe.
Wow.
And I would have to chug water to breathe. And these little fits would go on anywhere from 5 minutes to 45 minutes. Like, if I hiccuped, that would cause it to happen. And I would just be panicking, like completely closed off airway, can't breathe.
Yeah.
And so, and then I find out, after he's gone and I'm in therapy, that you're 600 times more likely to get murdered by your significant other if they choke you. And that was like a really hard statistic for me to learn.
Well, yeah, especially since you directly experienced it. Yeah.
Right. And, he ended up going to prison. But I was already sucked into a life that I never wanted by the time he went. I went to Spruce Run, the battered women's shelter, and they turned me away with 2 beds open. They said my situation was too dangerous and my injuries were so extensive that it put the other women in the shelter in danger. The girl that got one of the beds, the guy didn't even hit her. He kicked her car. And that's absolutely domestic violence, destroying property. But, in comparison to my situation, where if I hadn't gone to the hospital, I would have been dead, and you're turning me away. So I had made a deal with my father that if they wouldn't help me, I would sign temporary guardianship over so he couldn't just show up and take my children. And I lost my health insurance because of that, any, public aid to help get me into new housing because I didn't have them in my care. I no longer had access to that. So I was trying to self-medicate, deal with my trauma. I couldn't get into therapy because I had no way to pay for it anymore. And, drug dealers ended up protecting me. They gave me places to hide. They gave me, drugs to sell, to work. I was already so hardened and callous, by this experience. Like, I didn't cry at all. Like, I was just like shell shocked for years. And
you were in pure survival mode.
Yeah. And, I ended up getting sucked into a life I never wanted. And because I was so traumatized, it made me appear intimidating and tough. And I ended up moving up the ladder of, this underworld. And I ended up, running with some really dangerous people that, like, the stuff you see in movies. Like, I would like look in on my life and be like, how did I get here? Like, how are these people like respecting me the way that they do? They don't respect women in any, shape or form, but, they are respecting me because, I showed, I just wouldn't back down. I wasn't scared of anything at this point. Like, I wasn't scared to die. I wasn't scared to fight. I wasn't scared to, get my hands dirty if I had to. And, eventually I wound up getting arrested in 2011 for drugs. And then the feds picked it up 2 years later for the same drugs. So, double jeopardy isn't a real thing for drug dealers. The state can pick you up and then the feds can pick you up for the exact same bus, the exact same substance, even though you got yourself clean, even though you turn your life around, it doesn't matter. You're going to prison again. And so when I got to, the county, I did 16 months in the county, just waiting to go to prison. You get right to a speedy trial. That's not necessarily in your best interest. If you rush a speedy trial, you're not going to get a good defense. And I wasn't even taking it to trial because I was guilty. So, if you take it to trial, you have the right to a speedy trial, but they have the right to smoke you if you lose. And the feds have a 98%, win rate.
Sure.
And even the only person I know that beat the feds in trial, they just appealed it until the judge found her guilty. So it doesn't really matter, if they want to get you, they're going to get you. And, my first week at Somerset County, I had no idea the systemic oppression going on in this country until I went to prison. My first week at Somerset County, I watched an entire pod of women get strip searched because they signed up for a razor and the male sergeant wanted a list of who shaved their vaginas and who didn't. Those that did were written up and punished. Like, you know, and when Britney Spears stood up in court and said, that's what sex traffickers do, like, I felt that in my whole soul. And the things she was describing is how inmates are treated. And, you know, I watched women get brutalized, get gassed, get beaten. I watched one girl get her collarbone broken because she asked why she was being hauled to solitary. If you ask a question, why am I going to solitary? Why am I getting written up? They will use violence on you. And it's brutal. They don't care that you're a female. These male guards, you know, a lot of them are domestic abusers, and, you know, they take their DV issues out on the female inmates.
Wow.
And yeah, I watched a lot of women die of very treatable diseases. One girl went into labor and they were refusing to take her to the hospital, and we all flipped out and threatened to riot. And that was the only reason they brought her to the emergency room. And they said, if this is just Braxton Hicks, if this is a false alarm, you're going in solitary. They were going to punish her for a false alarm. You know, and I don't know if you have kids, but, you know, if you've dealt with a woman who's at the end of her pregnancy, it happens.
Yeah.
You have a false alarm for labor. If you don't want to pay for a pregnant woman's, you know, health care, don't have her in jail.
Interesting theory. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
wow.
Yeah. And,
it's so far out of the experience of so many people, what you're telling.
Right.
And I'm sure the story you're telling is true and accurate, but it's just so far out of people's experience. I mean, first of all, obviously it shocks people to hear it. Secondly, I think it kind of puts the brain into, survival mode, just kind of, you know, out of sympathy.
This is normal. This is like normal everyday stuff. Like these are and you know, when I was making a big deal about being forced to strip naked in front of cameras that men were controlling, all the other inmates were like, dude, calm down. We all have to do it. I'm like, I don't care if we all have to do it. It's illegal for them to have cameras in those cells. They're not supposed to strip you in front of cameras. Like, and it was a PTSD thing for me. Because my ex would trap me in the bathroom and make me get naked and be like, that's where you're going to die. And then he'd torture me and terrorize me for hours. So when I was put in a cell and forced to strip under duress of being extracted, maced, and when they extract you, they show up 10, 12 deep, all in tactical gear. They have electric shock shields. They have batons. They have these canisters of gas that are scientifically designed to take the oxygen out of your throat, basically, so you can't breathe. This is what they use on unarmed women and men. And, you know, it's not like they're dealing with a bunch of inmates rioting. They're dealing with one woman in a cell, you know, just asking, like, why do I have to do that? Why am I stripping in front of cameras? Like, that's like, and I asked to go in the shower, like, put me in the shower. I don't want to strip in front of these cameras, you know, for your male officers to watch. And because they would time it so that they would go to control, like the high ranking sergeants and lieutenants, they would go to control when they knew a woman was getting put in solitary so they could watch. It was a power thing. This is not a sexualized, you know, oh, they're attracted to us. No, it is a power trip thing. Like, and that's what people misunderstand about, you know, rape culture. It's not about being attracted to the woman. It's about, you know, the power and, you know, destroying her. And, you know, I filed a PREA against them, which stands for the Prison Rape Elimination Act. And, this is how they're burying the abuse in prison. And this is one of the bills I'm working on. When I went to Alderson, when I finally got to prison, I filed this complaint. Anything sexual goes under PREA. So the fact they stripped me out in front of a camera, that would go under PREA. When they got the response back from Somerset County, Somerset County admitted to everything I was complaining about, but they deemed it unfounded. Like, they basically said, yeah, we did it and it's fine. So it wouldn't go any higher. So if you deem something unfounded, they get to do their own investigations, and then nobody else looks at it from an outside source. So when Alderson got the response, they wouldn't even let me hold it to read it myself. They read it to me and then told me I couldn't have a copy of it. Now, when you get out of prison, you have 100 days to file any type of official complaint. But the first thing they ask you is, okay, do you have the paperwork? Where's the
Mm-hmm.
complaint? Well, I did, but they wouldn't give it to me. And that is how they are just burying all this abuse in there by not giving inmates the paperwork. And by law, they have to give it to us if we request it, which I did, but they know there's no consequence if they don't. So the bill I'm shooting for is to hold these facilities financially accountable for every day they stonewall an inmate and refuse to hand over paperwork. And, after I got out of prison, Alderson, those same officers that wouldn't let me have the paperwork, the captain and 4 of his subordinates all got arrested and got convicted of raping and stalking inmates and tampering with PREA evidence. So it wasn't just me they were covering for and stonewalling. It was dozens of other inmates, and those inmates got it way worse because they actually got, raped. And they just buried it. The captain only got 10 years for raping over a dozen inmates. I mean, that's how much value they put on our lives. If they had done that to regular women that weren't inmates, he'd be in there for life, probably. 12 convicted,
Oh yeah, I hear what you're saying.
You'd be screwed. And so this is how they bury it. And I'm also pushing for a bill that makes it so cops are like correctional officers. Like an inmate can't consent to any sexual actions because we're helpless.
Sure.
We don't have, they have authority over us.
Mm-hmm.
But cops, there's that consent rule. They can use, she wanted to. They can still use that. And my thing is, like, as a woman who's been to prison, if a cop were to come on to me and I said no, like, the only thing I'm thinking is, what am I going to go to jail for when I tell him no? They have power and authority over us. We can't say no to them, without consequences. And the fact that they're using their badge to get laid on taxpayers' money is disgusting anyway.
Yeah.
They should not be allowed to get any sexual gratification on the job or use their badge to try and bully a woman into having sex with them. So I think cops should be the same as correctional officers. There's no such thing as consent. They just have too much authority over us.
Okay. A couple things I need you to clarify, just because you're naming some facilities that I'm not familiar with. I don't even know where Somerset is located or anything like that. So we're talking about Maine. All right.
Yeah. Alderson is a federal prison in West Virginia. Like sent federal inmates get sent all over the place. And, until I got sentenced, I was held in Maine in the county jails. And then once I got sentenced, they shipped me all the way to Oklahoma. And I went back to West Virginia. Like, you have to go to Oklahoma to get to West Virginia from Maine. They spend so much money with their traveling, with their ridiculous travel, routes. It wastes gas. It wastes taxpayer money. They waste so much money and it's so unnecessary. Like my friend Megan, she had 30 days left when she finally got sentenced. So they shipped her all the way to Connecticut from Maine for 30 days. Like, you could have just left her in the county jail in Maine and not spent all that money, transporting her. From a block away, Penobscot County Jail to the courthouse. It costs $400 to transport one inmate for just a block away. I don't even want to think about what it is from Maine to Connecticut.
To the best of your knowledge, obviously you're describing based on your own experience and the experience of people that you know, but to the best of your knowledge, how widespread is this? This
is across the country. It's really bad. Remember when Trump filled the ICE camps with refugees and, there were all those stories coming out of women being sterilized against their will? They've been doing that to American inmates for decades, especially down in Texas. I met, probably a handful of them, along my journeys through the federal prison system. Not a single one of them was white. And now all of a sudden, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, it's a great day for white lives everywhere. And I can't remember when it dawned on me that all of the women that I'd met that were sterilized against their will were not white. But it was, quite later, after like I realized that, and I'm going, oh my God, like they're really like committing genocide, like on these, marginalized groups. And it's absolutely insane.
So obviously, I mean, it goes beyond, without saying, this is like extreme trauma. This is trauma beyond any trauma that most people are even exposed to. And certainly I can understand why you're so passionate about it. That makes a whole lot of sense. But at some point you had to kind of climb out of this. How did you climb out of it?
Oh, well, honestly, when I got out on probation, I had no health insurance, and the prison had me on $1,300 worth of psych meds that I had no way of paying for. So I started to spiral immediately because I was detoxing off psych meds and the trauma. So I literally would have a panic attack every time I left my house. And I made it 6 months on probation before I went back. And what really, turned it around for me was when I got off probation, Janet Mills was the new governor. And she expanded MaineCare so that people like me could get health insurance. So I was able to get intense trauma counseling. I was able to get MAT treatment and, whatever medications I needed. And that was really like the game changer for me. It was a lot of hard work. It was, I went through a couple month period where I didn't leave my house. I went through this complete agoraphobic stage where I was just terrified to leave my house. I couldn't even go to the store.
Yeah.
And, that was like really hard to get through. It didn't help that the lithium I was on, started like messing with my kidneys a little bit, and it wasn't, I couldn't get my levels right. So that made it a lot worse. But, I don't know if I'd even be alive right now if Janet Mills hadn't, changed that policy. When Paula Page was in the governor's seat, I went to DHS to try and get help so I could, get MAT treatment and all that. And they told me that I would have to get pregnant again in order to get health care. And I'm like, I'm just trying to be okay enough so I can be with my other kids that are already here. Like, but you don't want to help me with that. You just want me to pop out another baby when I'm in no position to do that. It wouldn't, that would not be fair for anybody, especially the baby. And it's just really kind of ridiculous. And, I remember being in prison and Paula Page getting on, TV saying, Black thugs from the hood come up from the cities and they impregnate our white women and flood our streets with drugs. And I'm sitting there like, I was a drug dealer. I was like involved in getting these drugs into the state. And you mean to tell me that these inner city kids who are more likely to join a gang than, graduate high school, to come up to Maine and they can quadruple their money? Like, it's not even believable. Like, the truth is you have white addicts, white police informants, going down to the hoods and getting these people and bringing them back up. So these police are getting a higher quota, and like they're just setting these dealers up, one after the other. I remember this one girl who was involved in 5 overdoses and they never arrested her. She was there for 5 deaths and they never arrested her because she was working for the cops. She was selling drugs in a school zone, and she would bring out-of-state dealer, one after the other, and they would all just go to jail. And, this is a problem too. They're letting the biggest criminals get away with the worst of the worst because they agree to be an informant. This is not helping society. This is not justice. These informants are going after people in recovery and like getting them to go out of state and getting them, bothering them to the point where like this one girl kept calling my friend up over and over again. He was working, he was clean, he was out of prison, he was done. She would not stop blowing his phone up for him to go get her drugs. And once he did, she wore a wire on him and sent him back to prison. Like, he never would have even gotten back into drugs or done any, rap daily informant. Like, I understand if you're a drug dealer standing on the side of the road trying to sell drugs, they're breaking the law, but don't go after people who are in recovery trying to better themselves because you want, the prison numbers. And that's what it's all about. It's all about profit. I mean, a hospital saves $350,000 a year contracting their linen to be washed by inmates instead of paying regular Americans a minimum wage. Not even a living wage, just a minimum wage. And this is what it's about. These corporations are getting an army of free workers that we were getting paid $5.25 a month to work 40 hours a week. And they work you hard. I mean, some of these inmates were fighting wildfires, were moving dead COVID bodies, and you're paying them pennies a day. Like, this is modern day slavery. They just rebranded it to, rehabilitation, and it's not. You're traumatizing people worse, and you're making it so they can't even function normally out in society.
You are obviously very passionate, and quite understandably why you're so passionate about it. I'm still curious to know a little bit more about your story and how you got to where you are now, because you told us happened when the governor made some changes that made it possible for you to get treatment. But at some point, you also had to take steps forward in terms of rebuilding your own life. That's the story I want to hear at this point. How did you rebuild your life?
Well, I had to change my mindset, and I had to stop hanging out with all of my old friends. I started, making gratitude lists and, just really trying to rewire my brain to, be more positive. And when I started working with legislation, my first thing was, why would they listen to me? Like, I'm just a bad statistic. And then, I changed that thinking to, well, why wouldn't they listen to me? I am their bad statistic, and, you think they want to listen to me and prevent what happened to me from happening to others. And, you have to stay positive. You have to, I got into my friend taught me about the law of attraction and, just positive mindset and how much easier it makes your life. It's not like an overnight miracle, fix everything, but it really is helpful. Writing things out and, writing what you want down instead of, focusing on what you're afraid of. And
I'm curious, when you first got exposed to that idea and were considering doing it, did it take a lot for you to go and try it, or were you resistant? I mean, how was your mindset dealing with trying to get this new mindset?
Well, they had a class where they showed us The Secret in prison, and I was like, interesting. And my friend Tamika, she would always meditate and be talking about the law of attraction and manifestation and binaural beats. I found binaural beats when I got out of prison, and I listen to them when I go to sleep, and it really helps just slow my brain down, because I'll stay awake. Total insomnia from trauma, and that's your body's way of protecting itself. It doesn't let you go to sleep because you're vulnerable when you're sleeping. So that was like a really hard thing. Yeah, and that was really hard, to deal with and overcome. And I still have to work on that. I have to eat no processed foods. I have to eat healthy, or my sleep patterns, they go all over the place. And I started going around to businesses in Bangor and talking to them about doing, an art show, because sometimes they'll do sidewalk artists and, all that stuff. And during the pandemic, I did an art show during Addiction Awareness Month. And then I joined the Bangor Art Society and started doing shows with them. And I also contracted my own cleaning jobs, because working in a regular setting where people would come and go and I have to deal with the public was too much for me.
Sure.
So I got my own jobs where I'd work by myself and I would deal with anybody. I was clean, and then, and I also during the pandemic, I found the company Le Galeriste, and they turn your art into like a wearable clothing line. And
Mm.
I joined vocational rehab. And if anybody out there has like mental health issues or trauma or anything like that, something that has made your life significantly harder, any type of disability, basically, there's something called vocational rehab. And like they gave me a business advisor, they helped me put a business plan together, and like they showed me how to start this business and, you know, get it out there, and taught me about PR. And, you know, they got me a $10,000 grant, and I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I've never got this much money before legally.
Yeah, right.
I love that.
Yeah, that must have been almost shocking when you
Yeah, I
experienced that.
couldn't even believe it. I was like so elated. And then, you know, I know how to market. You know, before my life fell apart, I marketed for a cleaning company. I went to all these meetings and I got jobs. So I knew how to market, but now I had to get over this, you know, mental block of what are they going to think of me? I'm just, you know, former federal inmate, like drug addict, drug
Mm-hmm.
dealer, scumbag. And it's like, you have to get over that, because, you know, I would like to see what anybody else in my shoes would have done, because
Mm-hmm.
I exhausted all options. You know, I did everything I could to get myself out of the situation, and it just wasn't enough. And there's 1/3 of Americans have, you know, a criminal background at this point, you know, and unless you're, like, if you've served your time, like, that should not stop you from getting a place to live, you know, getting a job. And, you know, I just, my mindset, and, you know, realize, like, yes, I do have stuff to offer, and these people will listen to me. You know, I just have to sell it the right way, and, you know, get the right connections, which is what I did. I
Mm-hmm.
also started going on LinkedIn and messaging podcast. I watched a workshop about PR and advertising, and like, cause I was trying to like advertise at first, but it just, you know, advertisement doesn't really do anything. You
It
know,
doesn't have the power it used to have.
it does to a
No.
point, but you'll spend thousands. Yeah, you'll spend thousands in advertising money. So I went the PR route, and that's why I'm doing these podcasts. And I figured, you know, I can share my story, share my brand, maybe educate some people, and, you know, spread awareness. So.
And how'd you end up doing clothing and art? That's an interesting direction to go into.
Well, I saw this ad at Le Galeriste, and it said, turn your art clothing. And I was like, huh, that's kind of, and no, environmentally friendly, which I love. And the clothes were just so beautiful. Like, it was a very like feminine brand. And, you know, I experimented with it just to see how it would look. And, you know, the stuff actually came out like really well. And when I ordered it, you know, it was just, the colors were beautiful, and it was so well made. And like, it's just, yeah, like, it's very durable stuff, and the materials are so soft, and like, I really,
Uh-oh. Looks
Oh,
like
no.
the technical issues are getting in the way, in a big way right now,
Uh,
unfortunately.
I know
Yeah.
that. But
Well, while we're waiting for her to come back, Sam, why don't I come to you? I mean, you've been listening very quietly to this whole story. Give me like your input right now. What are you thinking and feeling?
well, so the story up until where things started to improve, just so much of the was very shocking, and I think the fact that it was a lot of that was considered normal was the most shocking thing to me, and just like the perspective of these men and how they think it's like okay to treat human beings the way they did, quite horrifying, but it's very interesting. But I love that she's able to turn this around and like probably put some of that into the art and oh, there she goes. Hope she can come back. But
Oh, she's probably reconnecting. I think that's actually, we just saw her connection go off screen. That's probably a good sign, actually.
yeah, who knows technology? But then, yeah, and one thing that really stood out also when she was talking about how she kind of was getting herself out of that is mindset, which is something we talk about a lot on, like how perspective came into play in the earlier part of the story, but then how also mindset, like helped her get out of it and everything, and it channeling into the art. Like I was looking at the website, and it is beautiful art, and I love that. I would wear some of that.
Her art is quite beautiful, and we'll include a link in the description of today's episode so people can check it out for themselves, because it is quite beautiful. I was struck by the fact that she starts talking about mindset. She talks about how she saw The Secret and was learning about law of attraction, and a moment later she's talking about how she had a $10,000 grant. And I thought, okay, yeah, well, even if you're in the depths of despair, horrible trauma, your mind has been messed with, your life has been messed with, your body's been messed with, and yet she still manages to find a way to realign herself just enough to get that grant money to come in that helps her start a business. Like, wow.
That is beautiful. I love that.
Isn't that something? Yeah. So in the midst of a horrific story, all of a sudden light comes in.
Absolutely. And that's inspiring, really, to hear that, like, really anything can be turned around, and you never know.
It is inspiring. It's one of those, I mean, we get various experiences from, stories that people tell who are visiting us here on the program, right? I mean, they come from all walks of life. They have all kinds of different stories, different kinds of traumas and so forth. Some extremely severe, like in this case with Elizabeth, others much less severe. Interesting, though, how it's always the same story. They go through this terrible stuff. They learn from it. In many cases, they are still working through it. I mean, you could just tell the anger that Elizabeth is still feeling, quite understandably. I mean, it's palpable. It's like, well, you don't have to explain it. It's right there. You can feel it. And yet, even with all that, still the growth happening, still the change happening. I mean, that's inspiring all by itself.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I think that's beautiful.
It makes you feel like, no matter what's going on with your life, no matter what it is, no matter how rough it seems, no matter how difficult it is, you hear a story like that, you say, wow, maybe there really is a chance for me. Maybe I really do have a possible way of getting out of this mess that I found myself in.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, nothing's impossible.
Nothing's impossible. Yeah. Did you have any Taya moments while she was telling her story?
I think the main thing was when she was talking about mindset was the first thing that really struck me as Taya, but a lot of, I don't know, I'm still processing a lot of what she said.
Well, I was thinking about specifically when she talked about the journaling, writing stuff out.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Yeah, no, that actually did resonate with me, because that was one of the first things she said, and the part where things were turning around, and that's definitely something that resonates, because that was something that I started a little bit before Taya, but then definitely more so after or during and after, and just how appreciation is like very Taya and very like paramount to kind of one's well-being in general, and getting out of dark spaces into a better headspace and everything.
And there's something to be said for the writing part of the journaling. I've documented here many times how I was resistant to journaling. And to a certain extent, I still am. To be perfectly honest, let's be very bluntly honest, I resisted at times. Sometimes I just do it because I need to, but other times I say, no, I'm not going to do journaling. No, thanks.
That's fair. Oh, no.
But nevertheless, the stories that keep coming out of it, we heard it all the time when we were in the Taya boot camp, each one of us. We hear it through the guests that come through here. When the people actually sit down to do the journaling work, to actually do the writing on a fairly regular basis, the stories are all about how powerful it is, how literally it is probably one of the most effective release mechanisms that we humans have come up with.
I think so, because you can think all the thoughts all you want all day, but like actually having them down in writing and stuff like kind of makes it more real, for lack of a better term.
It does. It's like it almost flows out of your fingers. It's like you're releasing it through your fingers and through the pen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the pen is a method, like almost channeling
The pen is channeling. Well, it is in a sense. It really is.
Oh, I love that.
It's true. And that's what I was thinking about when she was telling that part of the story about how the journaling had made a difference for her. Now, she didn't give us a lot of description of that, primarily, I think, because she still had a lot she needed to tell us about the traumas that she went through. But you could just tell in her voice.
Absolutely. That's struck me in a positive way.
Well, we haven't had her reconnect in. I'm hoping we're going to get her back fairly shortly, because here she comes. I see a connection coming in right now. We'll give her a moment to get the video going and so forth. Okay, here she comes. Bring her back in.
Unplug it.
You made it! Hooray!
Sorry.
That's all right. We've been doing a little analysis since you've been going, talking about the things that we're picking up from what you were talking about. And Sam and I were just talking about how you mentioned the journaling and how the journaling had made a big. Oh no, we got a screen freeze. Oh, are you there? Oh nope, you're moving again. Good. All right. But the journaling had made such a big difference. And talk a little bit more about how that journaling helped you.
Well, I started writing in prison, like as something to do. And there was this great guy who would come in and teach a writing class to us. And, you know, all the volunteers that go in and volunteer to get the inmates out of the pod for just an hour, whether it's church, recovery, or a writing there.
We're getting that.
And, you know, he really inspired me, and I started writing, you know, about what I was seeing and going through, you know, in jail. And my dad sent me an English writing prompt book. So I started doing writing prompts in there. And I also, when I got out, I submitted some poetry to some writing contests that the Together Place was having. They're a recovery network, and they do a writing contest every year. And then they publish all of, you know, the poems and stuff, or the ones that make the cut. And I won 2 years in a row.
Congratulations.
So I got some of my poetry published. And yeah.
That's exciting.
I love
but it really helps.
What was that, Sam?
Oh, I just said I love that you had that outlet of writing while you were in that situation too.
Right. I also painted murals while I was in there. That was like one of the jobs I had, and I got paid $57 a month. I had one of the highest paying jobs in the prison. And
wow.
Yeah, I have pictures of some of my murals from prison at Danbury. I can show you guys.
Well, you can show. 99% of our audience is audio only, so they won't be able to see it. But Sam and I can see it, and a few other people who see the video can see it.
Well,
oh, nice. Very expressive.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that.
And then we put quotes in between. That's my Phoenix.
Oh, nice.
There's whichever way it's supposed to go. Yeah, so I did all
beautiful
murals. Yeah. It was definitely my blue period.
Yeah. Well, yeah, for listeners, they were black and white with blue tone. So it's basically 3-tone murals that she was showing us pictures of.
I love that.
I'm curious to know a little bit more about the journaling, if we still have you connected, because I'm not sure, because your screen freezes every few minutes. But if we do have you there still, can you talk about how it felt to do the journaling? I mean, did you find that the journaling was a form of release? That's what Sam and I were kind of talking about while you were trying to reconnect.
Well, in jail, it was until the guards would toss my cell, and then they'd read it and use it against me. And if I was venting, they'd be like, well, why are you writing this stuff? So I stopped because you have no pride. I have yeah, that didn't help me, but it really helps me now. And I'll follow, you know, the full moon. Like, I'll write my intentions and what I want to happen on the new moon, because like, that's the energy that's been, you know, it can cultivate and grow. And then when the moon is full, that's like when I'll write down, you know, what I want to get rid of. Like, if, you know, I'm working on, you know, toxic trauma that I'm trying to get over, or things that I want to release out of my life. And, you know, I'll write it out and then burn it, or, you know, whatever. And it just kind of, you know, gets your thoughts down, and, you know, it really helps your subconscious.
Talk about that feeling. How it helps you in that way. I mean, when you say it helps your subconscious, what are you experiencing in detail? The best detail you can give when you're doing the journaling today, not when you're in prison, but today. I feel like I'm organized, and I feel like I can get my thoughts together because, you know, I'm high functioning autistic. I was misdiagnosed as bipolar. So like racing thoughts are a big problem for me. And sometimes it'll get so bad, like I can't even like grasp onto one thought
and like
Mm-hmm.
hold on to it. It's like just so many are coming. So that will help me kind of, narrow it down and focus. I'm in control of life, and I have, I can, stuff like that. I can't control like people, places, but I can control what I write. I can control, my goals, and, it gives you kind of like your own power back.
Yeah, there's an empowering aspect to journaling, isn't there? I don't personally, for myself, I didn't know it was there until I actually tried it. Before that, I thought it was a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah, so did I.
You did, okay.
Write my feelings.
And I think one thing you said, Elizabeth, that's
and then after the cops, like.
Oh, go ahead. You froze for a second, so he tried to say something, and then you came back,
okay.
and that's what happened here.
Yeah. But yeah, I think just there's something to be said about like what you can versus what you can't control. That really stood out to me. That's been something that I've been thinking about lately as well.
Right. And I think that's why I like art so much, because like I am the god of be struck, in beautiful. It can be what it be. And I can control that, and I can make it as beautiful or as horrifying as I want to. And, you got to take the small wins, even as tiny as they are, because, you have to let go of this, I'm going to control everything. And that's a trauma response, because you're trying to control your environment around you so nothing bad happens to you again. And there's really no doing that.
So it comes down to how are you going to respond? You can't control what happened necessarily, but you can control your response to it.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, Elizabeth's signal has caused me a lot of problems.
Too.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
No, it's not your fault. Your signal's just cutting in and out. You can't control that. And, so we're just getting through the best we can. But, we are getting enough of what you're saying.
Yeah, they were doing maintenance.
We're picking it up.
Definitely. And a lot of what you were saying also, just like with your art, you have full creative control and you're creating your own. Like that resonated with me because it's kind of the same with my music and stuff. So I appreciate that. And yeah, it's like just your own world you can kind of create.
Right. Right.
Yep, that's really good stuff. All right, so you created the clothing line and the art line, and you got that going with the help of that financial contribution that was made. Talk about what happened after that. I mean, how I get the very strong impression how your life has been improving since then. Talk about some of those improvements.
Well, we actually moved out of I got my brain too low in Bangor. It was being sold in the community, and that was really cool. And I have a couple stores down here that are interested. I'm waiting to hear back from the owners. I also plan on going to like vendor shows and vendor events. So I've got some like events like that lined up that I'm really excited about. And yeah, like you just have to have the guts to try, honestly. And I'd still be probably super depressed and on the verge of relapsing, if I hadn't found this new mission, of selling clothes, sharing my art, like empowering women. Like I want women to feel so stunning and beautiful in these clothes. They could like walk through hell and bring the devil to his knees. Like that's how I want people to feel like in these clothes. I want them to feel powerful and like they can overcome anything. And, like all these paintings I painted during my own healing journey. And like, even with this koi fish, like here's one of my placemats. Like I put gold scales in to like draw in abundance. And like, I do a lot with numerology and like with, if it's a starry sky, I'll have a certain number of stars to like represent something lucky. Yeah, a lot. But then I'm kind of like, I go from like one extreme to the other. So then I'll have like these gothic pieces, like the rose and the moonlight, and a lot of like red and black, kind of like dark femme style. Yeah. And then there's like,
and just so listeners know, because obviously listeners can't see they can't see what you're doing. They can't see what you're showing.
Oh, right. I keep forgetting.
No, that's all right. But let me tell them the first one that you showed us was brilliant color, absolutely brilliant color. It just like popped out of the canvas. The second one, the Gothic that she showed, was pretty much what you might expect, sort of a black, gray, white with a little bit of color in the rose that was in the middle of it. And the third one was kind of halfway between. So you have a wide range of expression with the way you use colors, which is really quite fascinating.
Yes.
Many artists have they have their palette, right? They have their one way of doing things. You explore a lot of different palettes.
Yeah, it really depends on like what end of the spectrum I'm on that day, I guess.
Okay. That's fair.
Like, because I'm like super wound up. Other days, like I'll be like docile and kind of like in a darker mood, and it like really comes out like with, different things I paint, because yeah, you're right. Like I'll do, modern type art, and then I'll do, oh my God, I can't even think of it. The type of art where you don't finish it and it's kind of just like it could be interpreted as like other things, not expression. I don't know what it's called. My brain damage. I draw a blank. Yeah. There's definitely something for everybody.
That's true. Yeah, you have such a wide range there that there is something for everybody, which is very, very cool. One other thing I want to ask you before we do our wrap-up section here is your whole growth path since all this started to come together for you has quite evidently, it's evident to me, I think it's evident to Sam, it's probably evident to listeners too, it has helped you turn around in a major way. It's helped you to become, if you'll forgive the phrase, it has helped you to become the person you've wanted to be. And I know this is almost impossible to summarize, but talk about what that's like for you to have come from where you came from.
Sometimes I feel,
through and then come here.
If you had told me 5 years that I would be responsible for putting bills on the table and getting them passed, I would have, suggested mental health treatment. Like there was just like no way I would have even saw that. I mean, at some point I couldn't even come out of my house. And, the other thing that helped me was my friend created this trauma program, called She Writes Her from a Beautiful. She does reform activist stuff as well, but she created this amazing like therapy, course for women with trauma. And it really helped me come out of my shell. And, I'm just really grateful for that, because she inspired me and she kind of made me like believe in myself again, and, help me change that mindset. You have to change your mindset. If you're sitting there telling yourself you can't do it, like, coming up with all these excuses, I could still come excuses of why my life want it to be, and they'd be valid. There's still excuses, and there comes a time when you just have to like look yourself in the mirror and be like I am part of this problem. Like I had to get my trauma under control before I could get my addiction under control. And and like there's this you have to deal with the stigma of everything. Like for instance, I had conservative women telling me when I got out of prison, well, if you don't want to get raped by cops, go to prison. Like, just okay with that's I had let this all go with Somerset County and the PREA thing and all that. But then there was an article in the newspaper about Somerset County abusing inmates, and one of the sergeants told this inmate to kill themselves, and they had to cut that inmate down from a suicide attempt. That same officer did that to me. when I was in solitary,
wow.
given the wrong medication in full-blown psychosis. That's what the sergeant was doing. And I didn't try to kill that other inmate. Cut him down. So that kind of got me super angry about it again. And that's when I started requesting my paperwork from Somerset County and trying to, expose them for the corrupt facility that they are. And I'm still getting stonewalled. They told me to get a lawyer, and I got a lawyer, and they said he needs to subpoena the paperwork, but you can't subpoena paperwork without an open case, and you case without the that inmates keep dying there. And it gets so one story after another, and nobody's doing anything about it. So that kind of kicked me in gear to, I was trying to forget about it and just move on with my life for the longest time. And then, that article came out, and I'm like, no, they knew about her. They knew she was doing this to people, and they're doing her to this greatest earth, the land of the free and all that stuff. And, there's a great quote: a nation cannot be judged by how it treats its highest citizens, but how it treats its lowest. And, I totally agree with that. And we fall short of, treating our lowest members of society with any dignity or respect or, human compassion.
Well, this has been quite the visit to hear your story and to learn what you've done to not only turn your life around, but also do your best to help other people as well. Tell people before we finish up, first of all, how do they find out about your clothing and your art? We will put it into the description, but we want you to tell it too. How do they find you?
Yeah, you can find it at legalleriste.com/en/Elizabeth.Mikotowicz. I am also on Instagram and TikTok. The handle is the same. It's EP_1111. And I am doing a series.
Oops. Oh no. Well, we may have to just put the link in and let people find it that way, because unfortunately it looks like Elizabeth got cut out again.
Got most of it.
We got most of it. Yeah. Well, again, the link's going to be in the description, so people will be able to pick it up there. But I also wanted to give her my last bit that I do with everybody, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that. So, all right. Well, I'll give her a minute here, but I have a feeling she's having to go through that reconnection. She'll probably be, will probably be done before she's able to reconnect. So I will just direct her to, afterward, I'll tell her to listen to this part, because I do want her to hear this part. And that is, like so many people who come onto this program, she is a giver, and givers need to be recognized for the ways that they're giving. And she's been giving and giving and giving, despite having gone through horrible traumas that, just defy imagination. So, Elizabeth, when you're listening to this part of the program, I want you to know that there are many people that you've never met and that you've never seen, never will meet, never will see, whose lives you've affected for the better by the work that you're doing, not only on yourself, but also for others. So on their behalf, thank you for what you have done and what you continue to do. And we wish you all the best in your own journey as you continue to climb out of that horrific cauldron that you were stuck in for so long, and you're rising like the phoenix. I mean, it's really exciting to watch. So, Sam, any last comments before we disconnect today?
Just that I really appreciate you sharing your story and all the work that you're doing now to help others not go through the same thing. And just the art is so beautiful, and I loved hearing from you.
Yeah, good stuff. So thank you, anybody. We had people in the live stream. Thank you guys very much. Thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere, and we will see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.